Hello, welcome back to the Cosmic Consciousness series. If you haven't dropped a like and subscribe, do it now so you can be part of our club here, baby. Keep these pillars aligned. Today we'll be covering chapter 19 through 21. Chapter 19 is JB, whoever that is. He didn't care to let us know, but let's see what his case was like. JB was born in 1821, entered cosmic consciousness in 1859. He was 39 years of age, that is. He was a Methodist and in high standing in his church. He prayed fervently for light, for assurance of salvation, etc. Seemed no use, so he ceased praying, then light broke gradually. No subjective light, but a steady, continuous intellectual illumination. And with it, a deeper and deeper feeling of moral peace, rest, and happiness. Go figure, huh? This intellectual illumination and moral peace steadily grew until the whole man was transformed. He became an acknowledged authority among enlightened and able men on all spiritual matters. Consciousness of immortality came shortly after intellectual and moral new birth. It really came with the others, but took longer to attain to its full growth. He had the hope of immortality all along in common with other members of his church, but never the thing itself or anything approaching it. Now, that is, since illumination, he does not look forward to immortality, but is conscious that he has attained to it, entered into possession and enjoyment of it. Sorry, excuse the broken English here. I guess he's just using run-on sentences as a prose, if you will. He was born in England, was a weaver, in America, has for years been an undertaker, is, from the point of view of the schools, entirely uneducated. The present writer passed several hours in his company about 1890, that is year, and was impressed by his intellectual enlightenment, but far more by his perfect happiness, his absolute moral peace. An informant himself, an able and thoughtful man, a dweller in a great capital, who all his life has seen, heard, and read the best men and books, and who for years has been an earnest seeker for the truth, Saul JB, okay? First in 1870 and has been intimate with him ever since. He says, I had not heard him talk 10 minutes before I knew that I was now for the first time in the presence of a man who had what I wanted, rather. I have never met a man who was so mighty in the scriptures. He knew the Bible almost by heart and had the same inspiration as Paul and John. There never was a time when I met JB that he did not, by a word, a sentence, or a long talk, make it clear that he stood on a rock of solid truth. All right, that's the end of that one. Chapter 20 is CP. JD, now CP. CP was born in 1822, has been all his life a laboring man, was and is esteemed as a saint and sage by every man who knew and knows him. His conversation is enlightened to an extraordinary degree, is of course uneducated, attained to cosmic consciousness in the year 1859 when he was in his 37th year. An informant who knew CP well says, he has been a great dreamer of curious and remarkable dreams. His chief charm is his wonderful exposition of the scriptures. He is the very embodiment of the living Christ. He despises money. One feels in his presence that here is a brother. His letters are the most charming I have ever received. The most curious and strange thing in his case is that he believes that death ends all. He has been a fine public speaker for 40 years, first in the Methodist Church, then for a time in a semi-infidel vein, but since his enlightenment, his talks have been mostly biblical. He has strong socialistic views. The writer of the present volume has had 2 long talks with CP and can testify to his extraordinary intelligence. His want of faith in the continuance of the individual life seems at first sight to set him apart from the class of men having cosmic consciousness. But first, as before noted, we must make great allowance for range of spiritual life on that plane, and second, it must be noted that his conviction was, probably to him, more optimistic than would have been that of the usual eternal life. He believes, is indeed sure, that after death he will be absorbed into God and that in losing his individuality, he will gain something much more valuable. His feeling, his conviction, his knowledge, as in all these cases, is that the best will happen. He gives a slightly different interpretation to this best. This best, he says, that is all. In July 1895, CP published a book in which he endeavored to set forth some of the spiritual results of illumination in his case. Such a task is no light one, as many besides CP has found. It is, in fact, in all cases really an impossible task, as Paul Whitman and others have testified. CP was less qualified than have been some other men of the class for the enterprise, and his attempt, though exceedingly interesting, cannot be pronounced a perfect success. The following quoted passages will show, however, to whoever can understand them, that CP, beyond all doubt, belongs to the order of men treated of in this volume, a fact which was positively known to the present writer long before the book quoted was written. CP says, in his own words, Paul said that the Jews missed the kingdom of heaven because they sought it by the deeds of the law of Moses, that is, by the righteousness of moral law, instead of seeking it through righteousness of faith, in the perfection of the order of existence, the faith of the Christ. They could not see that there are two separate and distinct kinds of righteousness or laws, one imperfect for the imperfect or carnal mind, and the other perfect for the perfect or spiritual mind, which two states are as separate and distinct from each other as sheep are from goats. Hey, I get that. The life is not in believing there is a divinity somewhere, but in knowing it. To know the word of the truth and to have its spirit generated in the mind and heart is to have its pure offspring, its son, begotten within, consciously crying, Father, with certitude. The government of the carnal mind, which hath not the Son of divinity begotten in it, hath no actual knowledge of what the only true divinity is. No one knoweth the names of the actual divinity and its Lamb until those are written in their understandings by special revelation to each one individually. I feel like I was just talking about that. On this rock of the actual revelation of the Christ in the mind by its eternal Father, the congregation of the true Christ is built. This is the sole immovable basis of certitude, and the world may continue to divide indefinitely into disagreeing sects until it receives this revelation to itself, that is, because it can have no certitude until then. But all who receive it see eye to eye, and they cannot disagree. That is, with it and with all the rest of them. Okay, the footnotes for that. The same misconception is universal, or almost universal, to date. To every man who has had the smallest flash of cosmic consciousness, this is as clear as day. Unless your righteousness, says Jesus, shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. And then he shuts up. And he does not mean to exceed in degree, but in kind. Except a man be born anew. If any man is in Christ, he is a new creature. Not the old creature better, but a new creature, that is. And another, here again is a distinct and absolute mark, proving the writer to have had the cosmic sense. No merely self-conscious man knows of God as he knows of mundane matters of fact. Every cosmic conscious man does so. He knows by actual inward vision, just as he knows by self-consciousness that he is a distinct entity. In other words, the merely self-conscious man may believe in God but cannot know him, has never seen God, can never see him. The only men who can and do know the deity are the cosmic conscious men. The consciousness, that is, the consciousness of the deity and of the cosmos being the same thing. One, that is, or united. What CP very properly calls the congregation of Christ is simply made up of those who have been illumined. This illumination is the sole basis of certainty in these matters. If all the world had cosmic consciousness, all would agree on many basic questions of religion and philosophy, which are now disputed, though doubtless other questions, many of which are not in sight at the present time, would arise and be disputed thereupon. So continuing the passage. It was of this very part, the Son begotten in him, which was the spiritual mind, that the Spirit of truth, thou art my Son, this day I have begotten thee. And he knew the very day he was begotten, the very day he became conscious of being made alive to this Father of understanding, of his own understanding, because the spiritual Son in him spontaneously cried, Father, with natural certitude as it had not cried before. And thus this begotten Son of the eternal Spirit of truth so cries in every one of in whom it is begotten, so that they and they only know how the firstborn was begotten. And these only know what the dominion of the divinity is, for except a man be thus born again, he cannot see it. The carnal mind can talk about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, but it realizes nothing of either because this Son of God is not begotten in it, that is, not yet. Moreover, he said, at that day, the day when they should be conscious of the Spirit's having come to them, ye shall know that I am in the Father, and ye in me, and I in you. And as it was impossible for the man to be personally in them, and they in him, it is clear that when the Spirit of truth had written itself clearly in their consciousness, this would be both the Father and the Son in them at the same time, and they in that, and the work was purely that of the spiritual mental state. He that was least in the kingdom of heaven was greater than John, because those who entered into that were made perfect by the fullness of light of the eternal Spirit. Hence the law of the prophets were until John, but with him began the preaching of the kingdom of God. And to these, that is the enlightened, it is entirely clear that this divinity being eternal, all existence must be eternal, because all truth is simply the truth of existence. To these, existence is one eternal immensity of infinite existence, acting with infinite force and an inevitable, infinite, therefore absolutely perfect order, in whose perfection or truth all things and their action must of necessity be included, and this Paul expressed in one comprehensive basic sentence. All things are of the divinity, as he says. All right, footnotes for that. Needs no comment, huh? It's simply a statement of the definiteness of the new birth, that is, of the oncoming of cosmic consciousness. And God is the Father of each one of us, but no one without illumination can realize what these words mean. Like truly, man, needs no comment. Jesus looked upon himself as the first man of the new cosmic conscious race. Among merely self-conscious men, none ranked higher than John, but the least man of the new order would be greater than he, that is John. And it says one aspect of the cosmic vision. Okay, where were we? Okay, the apostles were ministers of the new covenant, which was based on this rock, which was an entirely new basis of ratiocination, and look that up. And they were not ministers of the old covenant of the moral law at all. The moral law, being the knowledge of good and evil, is the ministration of death, while the new law is the ministration of life. The old is the minister of condemnation, true, which is the death, and the new is the minister of justification, which is the life. Hence, those who pass into the dominion of the new necessarily pass out of the dominion of the old, and thus they must be made free from the old. And in it, thus, there is no condemnation, no death to those who are in the covenant of the Christ. This reveals the boundless radiance of the infinite face of the real divinity, beaming on him who sees it, the equipoise of mercy and truth. Mercy and truth, right here, mercy and truth. And when this Christ is formed in the mind and heart, it is known to be the spirit of faith in the infinite order of all existence as all true, and for this reason it resisteth not the evil, which is an inevitable part of the order, and seen in the light of the whole truth to be all good, having a perfect use thereof. And it is thus that the spirit of faith in the whole order is the Christ formed in the mind, and this is the Lamb of God, which hath taketh away all sin, by taking away all resistance of the natural order of existence. When this Christ is formed in the mind, then it has the perfect light by which all things of the divinity of all truth are perfectly or clearly understood. Then and only then it knoweth how all the things of the new covenant are spiritually discerned, for then and only then it knoweth the only true divinity and its Christ. And then the mind knoweth with entire certitude by its own experience, that is, all the firstborn, Paul, or any of the believers had of the knowledge of the truth, and they had its fullness too, came to them by internal revelation and not by any external signs and wonders. But it could though. Footnotes. The rock is of course the cosmic sense. Whether or not any of the apostles besides Paul had themselves cosmic consciousness, their work was on that plane, since the object of it was to preserve and extend the teachings of Jesus. In cosmic consciousness, there is no condemnation, no sin, no evil, no death. This may be a hard saying, but it is true. This refers to the cosmic vision, that is, the Brahmic splendor that we love. This Christ, i.e. cosmic consciousness, when that comes to Amar, he can say, as Whitman says, there is in fact no evil. It's all good, brother. To the self-conscious mind, there is good in the world, but also a great deal of evil, or the sense of that. To the cosmic conscious mind, all is good. There is no evil, or no sense of it. The chief function of those few cosmic conscious minds that so far the world has been made to reconcile, as far as they may be, the self-conscious mind to the cosmic order, which seem to be the one perfect to the other imperfect. Whitman expresses this very well in a short poem. When the full-grown poet came, out spake pleased nature, the round and passive globe with all its shows of day and night, saying, He is mine. But outspake too the soul of men, proud, jealous, and unreconciled, Nay, he is mine alone. Then the full-grown poet stood between the two, and took each by the hand, and today and ever so stands as blender, uniter, tightly holding hands, which he will never release until he reconciles the two, and wholly and joyously blends them. Wow, that was beautiful stuff. Okay, and concluding, by being perfectly enlightened by the spirit of all existence, he was reconciled to it all, therefore could not resist any part of it as if it had no right to be, and he surely saw that the way to the peace and harmony of mankind with each other was through the reconciliation to, or harmony with, the infinite order, which he saw to be all truth, therefore infinite perfection. Wow, that was a really good one. I really enjoyed that one quite a lot. The phone always drops down. Excuse the camera. Let's move on to chapter 21 and conclude this one. Chapter 21, the case of HB in his own words. My early home was one of quite narrow limitations. I did not find myself among books, though such was my desire for them that nothing else had any attractions for me. My mental activity must have been noticeable as I can now see it in comparison with that of others about me. I never found much pleasure in the ordinary amusements of boyhood. I preferred to be alone, and in summer I loved most of all to be in the woods. I found companionship in the trees. They seemed nearer to me than human beings. I used to talk to them and think that they said something to me. All my life the woods have thus drawn me to themselves, and now if I could, I would live among the trees. All my life I have loved to be alone and still do. Whether according to Byron's dictum I am a wild beast or a god, I will not stop to guess. It is also true that I love the societal of congenial spirits in domestic and general life. I soon learned that men regulated their intercourse with each other by conventional rules and not by what I could now understand as spiritual laws, but which I could not then name and could not understand, though I felt their presence as Wordsworth felt an outward presence in nature. The shocks that my spiritual consciousness experienced as I came in contact with rough men were such as no language can reach. There has been a gradual development of this perception or spiritual vision all through life. I early began to inquire how things came to be as they are, and that is what I am trying to do now. Or now trying to do, rather. As things look to me now, I must always regard it as a misfortune that I was born into the atmosphere of the Calvinistic theology. I lived for a score of years under the shadow of that black cloud, years which might have otherwise been spent in healthy growth. This theology I tried to accept intellectually because everybody about me did, but my soul never endorsed it. At the age of 40, I was quite free from the dwarfing influence of such a line of thought, and since then have breathed freely. What am I? Oh, wow, that was a nice fresh breath. What I am, I owe mostly to books. I have been but little in contact with men who could have taught me and given me strength. A year or two at an academy and 20 weeks in college is all I have known in those directions. As I came out from the shadow of that dark theology, I chanced to hear Emerson. I then got his books. I have been a close student of them for 50 years. Wow. I owe more to him than to I almost might say all other men beside. Next I found my way to Darwin. Mine was the only copy of The Origin of Species to be found in my community for 10 years. Oh, I have a blue shirt on now. Whoa. The first real mental illumination I remember to have experienced was when I saw that the universe exists in each of its individual atoms. That is, the universe is the result of a few simple processes infinitely repeated. When a drop of water has been mathematically measured, every principle will have been used which would be called for in the measurement of the heavens. All life on the globe is sustained by digestion and assimilation. When by voluntary and traumatic action these stop, death follows. The history of an individual mind is the history of the race. Know one thing and its properties and relations, and you will know all things. All crystallography is in one grain of sand, all animal life is in one insect, all vegetable in a single bud. I was then about 40. My next was when I saw there was no boundary line between vegetable and animal life, and hence no beginning nor end to either. The first of these experiences came to me long before I found what Thales said on this point. These statements are perhaps enough to indicate the direction in which my intellect, that is, has developed. Whatever calm delights have come to me through the intellect, the true grandeur of my days has been found in the atmosphere of the moral sentiment, a grandeur which reduces all material happenings to the value of toys. I felt this when a boy as an overshadowing presence that was constantly drawing me away from all that seemed to make up the life of those about me, drawing me away I knew not how or whither. What I then saw dimly or through the glass darkly now shines all about me with a brightness exceeding that of the sun. In this light I see that love and justice cannot be limited by what, in the poverty of our ignorance, we call time and space. Hence all the thinking and all the teachings that has been done in the world, founded in our ideas of time and space, are blown away like chaff or are consumed like wood, hay, and stubble. I was nearly 60 when I came to see what is true in any time and in any place is also true at all times and in all places. Or what we call law found anywhere will be found everywhere. though men may give it different names, that is. What men call gravity holds in mental no less than in physical phenomena, and all physical phenomena at their best, are dull and murky till they come up into spiritual life. As an illustration that every law has its universality, take the familiar law or principle that action and reaction are equal. What is this but reaping the whirlwind after one has sown the wind itself, or how does that natural law differ from this teaching? Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Are they aught but different strains in the great cosmic melody? Soon after I began to understand the paradoxical teachings of Jesus, as when he declared that he that would save his life must lose it, and he that would lose it, for Jesus' sake, alone shall find it. The same in Paul as having nothing yet possessing all things. From this it was but a step to a knowledge of the central principle of all spiritual life, namely the giving of oneself for others. About 10 years ago, at the age of 60, I found myself tormented with that question with which intelligence has wrestled since there was any of that commodity in the earth, namely the beginning of things. When in deep agony, a side light was flashed upon my soul with almost blinding suddenness. If you could find a beginning, would not that beginning be itself an end? Hence, if you could find one end of things, would not that show you that there must also be another end? What? An end of all things, beyond which there could be only blankness, as there must have been before things began to be, if they did begin? No! Or if at all. There was no beginning, and there can be no end. No. Since that moment's experience, I have not been troubled as to the immortality of the soul, and I now think I never shall be again, that is. 5 years ago, I had an experience which has proved more fruitful to me perhaps than all others combined. I had a fall, striking on my head. I lost consciousness. In regaining possession of myself, I passed through all the experiences of the race. In the first stage, I was simply aware of the fact that I was something. What I was, I neither knew nor cared to know. I did not know what knowing was. I was calm, blissfully happy, and to me there was no past nor any future. There was to me no time, no place, no anything, save that tiny speck of consciousness, myself. As there was nothing to note duration, that stage might have been in duration incomprehensible. At any rate, such was its lesson to me. This stage of blissful existence was ended by my discovering that there was something about me which was not myself. I began to see, and seeing I began to reason, and so I at length found my objective world. As in the previous stage, I had no use for time, and so to me there was none. This stage might have lasted an eternity, so far as I took note of it. I was busy in studying myself first, and then the things about me, and so the infinite peace of my first experience was broken up. Unable to think otherwise, I concluded that what I saw must be like myself, and so I began my acquaintance with this outer world by transferring to its objects and what I found in myself. This stage lasted in my experience from the moment I saw things about me to the dawn of experimental science. I then became acquainted with the beginning of all knowledge and especially of all religion. Of course, self-consciousness soon returned and I came back into my old world again. Since that hour, my experience has seemed more than that of all my previous life. Nothing is now any longer dim or obscure. My spiritual expansion has been rapid in these 3 or 4 past years. I live in the world, but I seem to myself not of it. I enjoy what I must call spiritual vision. No sooner does the intellect seize upon a fact than I see it in its spiritual relations, no less than in its material, only much more clearly. The perfection of mathematics is simply a demonstration of the spiritual truth that God cannot lie. Natural phenomena are but the shadows of the spirit from which they spring, as the human face changes under the influence of love, hatred, or fear, that is. Also, color in nature, which washes all things in its warm waves, shows us what spiritual love would do if once let loose in the world. The Bible is simply a picture which I see with infinite clearness. This vision seems to extend to the atom dance in nature, no less than through all laws, all knowledge, all science, all history, and all religion. You set me a hard task when you bid me give the difference I perceive in myself. Since these experiences. You set me a hard task when you bid me the difference I perceive in myself since these experiences. I find no language in which I can tell of all the things in this room where I now am. I have not even discovered an alphabet. When, oh when, shall I be able to reveal its poetry? I see everywhere in every object unceasing motion, and in that motion a creative force forever and ever. repeating and re-repeating the same simple process as to infinity. Through all nature and the grand rhythms roll, and heaven and earth are filled with the melody. Men are but boys chasing shadows. The spiritual significance of the world none seem to see, the infinite simplicity of its processes none care to understand. Concluding. Okay, summary. This seems to the editor to be probably, though not certainly, a true case of cosmic consciousness in which the cosmic plane was reached gradually and not as usually happens per saltum. If it is not that, then it is a case of gradual ascent to the extreme limit of the self-conscious mind. In any case, the experience of HB is interesting and instructive and well deserves a place in this book. Thank you, brothers and sisters. You have a great day.